Okay, so if the scale is a foot by 1/4 of an inch, okay, so 1 foot to 1/4 of an inch. Okay, that's the scale. 1 foot equals 1/4 of an inch. 1 foot is it goes with 1/4 of an inch. Okay. How big will a room 10 feet by 12.5 feet? So you got a room. It's 10 feet by 12.5 feet. What will it be in the drawing? Well, for every foot, it's 1/4 of an inch. So there's more than one way you can do this, but I want to keep it to the same pattern of solving these things. I want to use this again. So I've got on the top, since the feet are on the top, it's got to be the actual room, or I could put actual, and then the scale, right, the model down here. Okay, so we've got the room on the top, 1 foot, 1/4 of an inch, and it's going to be equal to, okay, so what happens if it's 10 feet to however many inches? Okay, so just to follow the same pattern we've been doing, let's do it this way. Now I could again do 10 times 1/4 divided by 1 will equal this number. That's an easy way to do that. Notice as well, I can also go like this, and this works all the time. This is not a new thing just for this one. This always works. If you ever notice that you're going, say you're going, I'm trying to find this one right here. If you ever notice in the numerator with the denominator, right? If you ever notice that 1 to 10, right? I can just go 1 times 10 to equal. If you ever notice something, I go, oh, I just multiply that by this number to get this. You can actually do that this way as well. 1/4 times 10 will give me how many inches it is. Okay, but now we're going to deal with a couple problems here. First, let's ignore that for a second. We'll come back to that. Let's just solve this the way we normally would. 10 by 1/4, 10 times 1/4, right? This times this divided by 1 equal this. So 10 times 1/4 divided by 1. Okay, well, the divide by 1 I know isn't going to affect anything, but 10 times 1/4. So let's go over here. You could just do this on your calculator, and that's probably what many of you will probably do, but that's fine. 10 times 1/4. When you multiply a number times a fraction, you have to think of this as a fraction as well, the denominator being 1. 10 times 1 is 10. 1 times 4 is 4. Now I'm going to simplify if I can. Since they're both even numbers, I can simplify that. 2 goes into both of these. 2 goes into 10 5 times. 2 goes into 4 2 times. 5 halves of something. If you had 5 halves, how many full do you have? Right? 4 halves would be 2 full, right? With 1/2 left over. So I could say 2 and 1/2. Okay, so I could start off and I could say, okay, so that means it's in the scale drawing would be 2.5 inches by, and then we'll have to solve for the other one. You could have also just plugged this in your calculator. 1/4 is 0.25. So we could do that as well. 10 times 1/4. 10 times 0.25. Notice it's the same thing, 2.5. 2.5 is the same thing as 2.5. All right, now let's do the other one. The other one, 12.5, so let's scroll down a little bit here. Oh, no. There we go. So 12.5, so the other one, we got 1 foot to 1/4 of an inch equals 12.5 feet to unknown inches. So we're going to do the same thing. And since this one is a decimal, I'm definitely going to use my calculator for this. 12.5 times 0.25. So 12.5 times 0.25, 3.125. Right? Divide by 1 doesn't change it, so I get on this one here, I get my final answer. Go back to red. 3.125 inches. Okay, if you want to get those both the same, that would be a good idea. So you could go, well, since I already have this in as decimal, I'll put this in as a decimal as well. 2.5 inches. Okay. Now, if you want to know, by the way, if you're like, well, what is this 0.125? If I'm thinking about a like a tape measure, right? Tape measure doesn't work quite the same thing, and you may want to have it as a tape measure or a ruler. So you go, well, let's leave it as 2.5. Well, then what is this? Well, 0.125 of an inch, what is that in sixteenths? So 0.125, if we're thinking about that in terms of what kind of like 16th, 8th, you could, if you're not for sure, if you haven't memorized it, you could say, well, what's a 16th of an inch? You could do 1 divided by 16. That's 0.0625. 1/8, 1 divided by 8. Oh, look, there it is, 0.125. So 3.125 would be the same thing as 3 and an eighth. So this scale one, 2.5 inches by 3 and, oh, that's supposed to be an eighth inches. You could do this, or you could do the 2.5 by 3.125. Either one of those is fine with me. Construction worker would like that one better, though.